Okay, hi. Lovely to have you, Rio. Finally, we know each other since a year, I think, but we haven't got on a call to speak more about Major League Baseball in India or otherwise in the US as well. So I'll just start with you. You've been in India for some time now. So tell me what's your role here?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I know we've been talking about this for a while, so I'm very excited that we finally got this opportunity to talk. And, anytime I get to talk about baseball in the Indian market, that's essentially my job. Anything to do with baseball development. Obviously, we come here with a very long-term plan to be able to build a foundation from the grassroots up. And then hopefully in the next 10, 15, 20 years, we see the game progress in this market becoming a normal sport, and then hopefully eventually it becomes a powerhouse for baseball where they start to compete internationally, produce players at the higher levels. So I've been loving every moment of my life in India, and obviously I love my job here. So thank you for having me again.
Brilliant. So tell us about the growing presence of MLB in India in terms of audience, in terms of viewership of MLB in the US, etc. So what's the landscape looks like for MLB in India?
Yeah, and so I think oftentimes when a league or a brand comes in, the big focus becomes, in today's day and age, what is the social media following? What's the audience? If you're on TV, what's the viewership? But we kind of had a different approach in terms of A, the brand is very nascent, and then B, the sport itself is a very new sport to the market. So our job in the early goings is to really make baseball a normal sport in India where it's socially accepted. So we've been taking a lot of time doing our grassroots programming, and that really kind of lines up with our long-term vision of building that foundation so that we create a generation of children who can say that they grew up consuming baseball in some way or another. It could be playing the game, it could be watching it on TV, following it on social media. But, let's say 5 years back before we had a presence, that number was very close to zero. But we know that in the 4.5 years that we've been here, we've started to ingrain baseball into a large number of children who are going to grow up to be adults, to be decision makers, to be parents, and baseball becomes another option for them. And so, I think there's different ways to measure presence. If you're talking about what's the brand awareness of Major League Baseball, that number may have not ticked as much as we'd like to, but at the same time, that hasn't necessarily been our focus in the early goings. Obviously, in the future, we would love for MLB to be recognizable widely and throughout India. But I think right now, our focus is to really make sure that baseball becomes a staple in Indian sports. And it's definitely in the conversation of the sports world in this market.
But I think like MLB is actually doing pretty well, the kind of brand awareness, like you said, there is still, yeah, maybe it's not that hyped up, but it's still pretty much there. So is there a specific marketing and branding strategy which, you guys work with within the Indian landscape?
Yeah, I think last year was the first time that we really kind of intentionally did a marketing opportunity, put our investment into a marketing opportunity. Again, the basis of all of this is to be able to provide as many opportunities to play the game. So while we're providing these opportunities to school children or to children outside of the big cities in the rural areas, MLB kind of comes attached with that sport. And so basically, we wanted to create an environment where baseball equals Major League Baseball, and that becomes a staple for the Indian children. In terms of wider marketing, we've partnered with Star Sports, with Dream 11. They've been airing our postseason games, our regular season games. The only issue is that all of our games are played in because of the time difference past midnight for the most part. So it is hard to bring or increase that number of audience or viewership in terms of watching the live games. But we created a documentary last year that talks on baseball in India as a whole. But it was highlighting a Indian American young man named Arjun Nimala, who was drafted by the Toronto Blue Jays, one of our 30 clubs in the US, and actually the Toronto Blue Jays, so they're in Canada. drafted by them in the first round. And so we kind of illustrated his journey coming back to India, seeing the areas that his parents grew up, taking his Indians, I guess, self peace and mind to the US and implement it into the baseball world that he's going to be in for the next couple of years. So, I think even in that initiative, you can see that we're not trying to put the brand up front. We're trying to make the personal connection for the people that play the game to say, okay, if that kid or that person, that Indian person can play the game at the higher level, then I can definitely do that too. So creating that mind connection, um, and then really as a end result, tying that into Major League Baseball is what we've been trying to do up until this point.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Rio, but you remember the $1 million arm?
Yes.
It was baseball based. Am I correct?
Yes. It wasn't a Major League Baseball production, but it
Okay.
was a agent who happened to see cricket on TV and said, this definitely correlates. There's an opportunity here. So the movie $1 Million Arm is based on that agent story and the two young gentlemen who signed with a Major League Baseball organization, the Pittsburgh Pirates. And actually, Dinesh Patel, who is one of the winners of that contest, I must have been 15 years ago, is playing a huge role in our baseball development. He's been a part of a lot of our grassroots programming. He's been our guest at all of our MLB Cup finals. And, it's just a new opportunity or a revived opportunity for him to give back to baseball and the baseball community here. So it's been really cool to see.
Definitely, because I'm from Lucknow, where this competition was held, and I think they were ultimately selected from here. So I remember that was the first time I got acquainted with MLB, and you mentioned that I know there's a huge time difference, etc. Because when I watch US Open, of course, I know how difficult it is, but NBA is doing it. So have you ever thought of like a cross promotion? Because NBA guys are getting in, let's say, Ranveer Singh and trying to cross promote, trying to create that buzz. So something along this line of cross promotion, cross marketing, is that something I mean you'll consider in the near future as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, all the US major sports, and even to Major League Cricket, who's trying to make a presence in the US right now. We're obviously not partners, but we all work together. We bounce off ideas. There's a lot of learnings that we have from their presence in India. They've been here for a longer period of time than we have. And hopefully there's something that we do that, they can be inspired by. So not necessarily a direct collaboration, but I think we all see the opportunity in the digital world today where you don't necessarily have to sit in front of the TV live to be able to be a fan of a sport. There's, especially the younger generation would go through the stories on Instagram or go through the X feeds to figure out scores and what happened in the games. And so I think there are different ways where we can engage fans. And they can still be hardcore fans, even if you don't stay up until 3 a.m. to watch the full 2.5 hour baseball game. So I think we just need to be a little bit creative on finding ways to create that hook, allow these fans to consume the sport at a decent hour. And then every once in a while, when there's a game that they really want to catch, that hopefully they have the opportunity to stay up and catch the full game because ultimately that's the best experience that you can have.
Absolutely. And I've seen that you guys have organized some of the local tournaments across few states. So if you can tell me about that, which are the states that are actually, where the kids are actually playing baseball, there's coaching available to them. Which are these territories in the country?
Yeah. So I think we start with Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, because that's where we have our partner schools. We have about 30 in each of the three cities, and it's a big mix of private schools, public schools, government schools. We obviously needed to kind of experiment and learn from, what are the kind of schools that are going to react positively to a new sport like baseball. There's definitely benefits to a private school where maybe the parents are a little bit more connected to the outside world. But you go to a government school, they may not have the opportunity to play or have a proper physical education program. So within our program, we're able to implement that. And so there's different benefits that come out of our relationship with these different schools. So definitely those three cities, you see a big presence. Um, and then MLB Cup is our youth tournament that we started in 2021, coming out of COVID. And year one, we had 12 teams that we kind of had to beg the coaches to say, hey, look, we need you to put together a team for kids that are 9, 10, 11, 11 years old. And it was just a walk-in tournament. You didn't have to play in to get there, but we had 12 teams. We did the tournament, huge success. But that was that. And in 2023, or last year, we had 113 teams compete, almost pan-India. And this year we have over 200 teams registered, and we're just right in the middle of running the tournament. And participants come from anywhere from Jammu Kashmir to down south in Kerala, Karnataka, Pondicherry. But one of our biggest states of participation has been Maharashtra. Not so much Bombay Central, but more in the outskirts, the Kopargauns. And then I'd say down south is probably the next pocket. In Hyderabad, Nizamabad, Kerala is where we've seen a lot of baseball activity, a lot of good coaches that have taken their time to kind of develop the game. And, over the course of the years, we've seen those numbers grow in those areas because there was a small pocket to begin with.
And that's very, very impressive. And, I see, like you said, that agent figured out a connection between cricket and baseball. And I think that is something which can be worked upon because that happens in sport all the time. You see it with tennis and, paddle and pickleball. They're like sort of, like squash. I don't know what they've mixed, but it's becoming a very like super successful model for them. Tell us anything more about sponsors. Has MLB signed anyone from India yet? Because, for example, we work with AFA, also Argentina Football Association, and they've got some really good regional sponsors on board. So MLB teams, etc. Do they want? Of course, they want to expand in India, but through sponsorships, has any of that happened?
Yeah, I think Major League Baseball as a brand, we like to bring value to obviously to our partners, and then obviously we want the partnership to make sense in terms of the narrative. So I think we're still looking for some is willing to go through that narrative of we're going to grow from zero to as far as we can go, start in India and get global. So, I think that's a narrative that we've been looking at, but it's not necessarily something that we've been focusing on because in the grassroots programming and the development, there's not much of the flash and dash. It's not like we're bringing in people and audiences to the grassroots programming. So I think for us, it's more important to build that relationship with these schools, with these parents, with these children who are playing the sport. And hopefully, as the years go by and we have a greater presence, there's some sort of value in some of the initiatives that we're running is when we can find the right partner to, kind of be part of our narrative and our story of growth in India.
Super. And what's your ultimate vision for baseball in India? Where do you see it? Where do you see it in the say next 1 year? I wouldn't say five. I'll just say 1 year.
Yeah, I think, you said it best. You compare tennis to paddle to pickleball. We initially looked at cricket and said the bat and ball, the catch and throw, there's definitely the correlation. And every child at age 1, 2, or 3 is at some point gifted a bat and ball in their house, and they're throwing the ball, hitting the ball. So I think that the same way cricket transpired in this country, if you play it at a young age and you continue to play it, and there are many opportunities to play it at different levels, then you are going to find talent. You are going to find children that excel in that world. And so that's what we're trying to establish right now, to be able to provide that opportunity for baseball to be accessible, to be consumable on TV, on digital media. And I think if that continues in consistently for the next 5, 10, 15 years, we'll definitely see talent coming out of India. So I think in the early goings in the next year or two, I think we want to continue to build on the foundation We want to continue to build new audiences, whether it's the young generation, the young parents who are about to send their children to decide to go to swimming class or to dance class or to baseball class, and hopefully it becomes one of their options. But I think ultimately, I strongly do believe that baseball, or excuse me, India can be a powerhouse in India, or excuse me, India can be a powerhouse in baseball if we continue to be patient and do the right thing as we move forward.